Hey everybody, Kent here. Today I'd like to talk about rivets and how I use rivets not only in hinges but also in assembling pieces of jewelry. So we're going to start by putting a hinge together. This is the bail that we made in Going Tubular, and I'm going to show you how to pick the rivet size or the size for your hinge, how to drill it out. And I'm going to go over some of the little tricks that I use to rivet a hinge together. So I'm going to go in here close with the diagram that I've done here, and we'll start there. So I've done this little diagram here showing cutaway of the hinge. You can see that's the back side of the hinge here. These are the 3 hinge segments that are going to be put together by the rivet. So basically, this is your rivet wire. And you cut it off and leave about a 0.5 millimeter to 3/4 of a millimeter, depending on the size of the button you want on each side. You leave a little bit extended and file it off. Also, one of the things I do is I measure my rivet wire first, and then I drill out the hinge so that the wire fits really snugly in here so there's no wiggle in the hinge. I also take a setting burr and use it to open up the ends of the hole that I've just drilled. And that helps the rivet, when I'm smashing the ends down, it helps fill in there so that the rivet does not slide in and out at all. And it's very strong. So what I'm going to do next is go over some of these things and show you in detail how I do this. So this is the bail that I made in Going Tubular. I filed out the edges a little bit and cleaned it up. I also filed the edges with that taper I told you about to keep it from pushing through. So it's cut at an angle this way rather than this way. The wire is from the original hinge. This is a little bit small, and I want to use a little bit thicker of a hinge wire. I've got some copper wire here that I'm going to use, which is a little bit thicker than this. So what I'm going to do first is measure my pin wire. This is 0.76 copper wire. Okay, and so then I've chosen a drill bit that measures the same as the wire, or very close. And what I'm going to do now is remove the smaller wire and open up the hole. Now I use this type of a colleted handpiece that rotates. The handle or the little ball on there rotates, which makes it kind of easy to spin. I like using this tool for applications where I don't want to go really fast, but I just need to get my job done safely. I use this sometimes when I'm seating stones with bead setting. I just open up a seat for a little round stone, or sometimes I use this for just drilling out a hinge like this. Okay, this is a very safe and straight, clean way to do it. Now this hinge is very tightly fit together here, so the hole already lined up perfectly. So it was just a matter of opening it up with this drill bit. So now I'm going to fit my wire in. Hopefully it should fit snugly. I have to actually force it through a little bit, which is a good sign, so that that means the hinge will be really tight. So I'm going to apply some force using this flat nose plier just to hold it so I can get it to push through without it bending. There we go. So I've got about, let's just say about 3/4 of a millimeter sticking out there. What I'm going to do now is cut it off. About the same length sticking out on the other side. So I end up with something looking like this. And take a flat file, and then I'm going to flatten the ends. Okay. So I want the ends to be flat if possible. And the wire fits tightly so that when I'm filing, it doesn't push the wire through. If the wire's loose, sometimes you'd have to brace it against your bench. Okay, so I've got these both filed down. And now before I actually, so I've got the length on this dialed in, so I'm going to pull this out so that I can put in my taper now that I was talking about earlier. So see how nicely and smoothly that just pulls out. I'm going to change this to a setting burr. Setting burr, of course, has about a 90-degree point on it. That's perfect for what we need here. And all I do is just give it a little twist to put a bevel on that hole. Just the smallest bevel. Just enough so that when I'm smashing down that wire, it catches the end there. Okay, so just barely enough to make a little bevel right on the end of that hole. Okay, so now I've got my pin. I'm going to reinsert it into the hinge. Fits very snugly. Just push that through with the pliers. There we go. So now I'm positioning it so that even amounts of the wire stick out on the ends, and now it's ready for riveting. So there's two ways to mushroom out the pins that your hinge or through your hinge or whenever you're doing a rivet. And my favorite tool, of course, is the hammer handpiece. If you do not have a hammer handpiece, you can also use a simple punch with a chasing hammer or similar hammer. The great thing about the hammer handpiece is it frees up your hand to hold the piece while you're riveting. If you're doing it with a punch and a hammer, you need to have an extra person help you so that you would be holding the piece down and centering the punch while the other person did the punching. So I'll show you both ways, and we're going to come in close, really close now to see how the hammer handpiece and the punch, the handheld punch, mushroom out the end of the pin, and then we'll go from there to how to finish it up. Okay, so first thing I want to make sure is that the pin sticks out equal amounts on both sides. Then I just place one side on the mandrel, or the lower end of the I would call it an anvil actually. And then I'm going to come in and very gently try mushing it out. I'm moving my angle a little bit so that it rounds it off a little bit. And I'm going to flip it over, do the other side. Now, it's not uncommon for it to push through like it did here. So I'm going to push it back and give it another go here. Okay, so that is pretty well mushroomed on. Now I want to just demo very quickly how to do this with a hand punch. So what I would do here is just, instead of using my hammer hand piece, I would just hold this the very same way. I would angle my punch and then have my wife, who's standing right here, do the tapping. Okay, tap. And it gives you actually a lot of control that way. And this is actually going to make a nice, smoother top. Oops. And let's do the other side. Okay. Tap, tap. Yeah, I'm angling this slowly around. And that's giving it a nice polished off surface. So what I do is I take a cup burr of the approximate right size that just fits right over the top of that mushroom. And I just give it a little bit of a twist, and that rounds off or cleans up the outside edge of the rivet. And then I just take a little bit of a Greenie wheel and make a little divot on the end of a point and just, and that polishes it up beautifully and finishes it. So now what we have is a perfect hammered hinge. So now I'd like to go from here and show you some other uses of rivets. Okay, so today I have 3 pieces that I've done in the past for the American Jewelry Design Council theme projects, and they all incorporate different uses of rivets, both for just cold joining 2 pieces of sheet, for cold joining platinum to gold, for attaching a white gold spring to a ring. And also I used some tubular rivets to set a stone in my badge project. So what I'm going to do is come in close and show you individually how I've used rivets in each of these applications. The thing with rivets is pretty much the same things, the same preparation is required that I showed you for the hinge. You need to make sure your rivet fits tightly in its hole, and that there's beveled outside edges so that when you mushroom the rivet, it grabs and really can't shift that in or out either way. And basically you are hammering the ends of the rivet to mushroom it out so that it cannot move. And it is a very, very strong way to join pieces together without using a laser welder or solder. So here we go. Let's go in close. The first project I have here is for the tension project. And my idea for this was to suspend a spherical form. Here it's two Mabe pearls set with caps on the ends that have upside down set pink sapphire, so the culettes are pointing out. And then I've got a white gold spring that wraps around the entire ring. As you can see here. Now white gold, this is a nickel white gold, has very high tensile strength. I still didn't want to anneal it before I put it on by soldering it to the ring, because that would soften the metal and take out some of the tension. So what I did, this is the white gold spring wrapping around, drilled holes through to the inside of the ring, and I used pretty heavy gauge wire here to do the rivets. This is probably over 1 millimeter thick wire, maybe 1.5, I don't remember exactly. So there's 2 rivets that hold this spring to the ring very securely. Even on the inside, you can see. So you can see the rivets on the inside. There's 1 and 2 rivets here. And they're polished so that they're comfortable to the finger. That way I was able to attach this white gold spring, which is forged stock, and enabled me to have a very strong spring to hold this sphere in place and have it rotate on its axis. So that's the first project. The second one I'd like to show you is for the hidden or secret treasure project for the American Jewelry Design Council. This piece is called the Cosmic Clam Ring. And there's a ring within a ring. This closes, but for now, I'm just going to pull the inner ring out. And in this case, I had an issue with, I had a number of pearls that I needed to set, but I wanted to have them kind of covered by this other structure. And so I didn't want to solder that on because I wouldn't have access for gluing the pearls properly. So I glued the pearls first and then riveted this platinum section down. You can see here, the rivet is exposed to the top, but on the inside, it's soldered. So you can see that there's a little bit of a solder joint here. The other 2 rivets on the side are actually riveted in. There's no solder on these rivets here. So this is just a real straightforward rivet here. And then these ones here are soldered and then smashed down. And that holds that piece on very securely. So that's another reason for cold joining. So in this case, I cold joined platinum to gold using rivets. My third example here is the latest American Jewelry Design Council project that I did, which was badge. And in this case, I used tubular rivets to set the stone. These are 5 pieces of tubing here that have been soldered facing out. And I wanted to be able to adjust the tension and height of the stone, which I had to specially cut to fit the piece. And this way I can adjust the height of and evenness of the base metal here, which holds the whole stone in place. And I can adjust the tension just by using this scribe is how I set this, is I just use this to flare out the inside of the tube. So I also did cut a bevel to this sheet, which is pretty substantial, I think 0.8 millimeter thick. sheet that wraps around here, and this is fine silver that is soldered to the inside. So to actually secure the stone, and all I had to do is slip this over and spread out these rivets using my scribe. And that is another type of cold rivet using tubing, which is always a great other use for tubing that we learned how to make in Going Tubular. So those are 3 examples of how you can use rivets for all your projects requiring cold joins where you want to join pieces of metal but not use heat to do so. I find rivets to be really useful for a lot of different projects. I even use them for making my ventilation hoods in copper in my workshop, things like that. So riveting is a really fun way to join pieces of sheet, wire, hinges, all kinds of things together. So I hope this has been fun and inspirational for you, and I find some uses for riveting in your work. So take care. I'll see you soon.